Mr. Mengal, I believe that when you were testifying yesterday, the prosecutor asked you what your current age was, right?
Yes.
And you're now 35, 36?
April 6, 1980, I don't keep track of things.
Okay. But at the time that you met Ezra McCandless, that was in the summer of 2017, right?
Yes, I believe so.
And you were 33 years old at the time.
I don't think that math lines up.
Well, let's try and do the math, just in case I'm making a mistake, because I don't want to. All right. You were born when again?
April 6 of 1984.
Of 1984.
Yes.
So you turned 30 in 2014, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's run it ahead 3 more years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You were 33 when you met Ezra McCandless, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
And she was 19.
Yes.
And although the day you met her, you didn't know her age, it didn't take very long until you found out.
Yeah, a friend had CCAP'd her and told me.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, when you say CCAP, that's because she had changed her name, right?
I believe
She had changed her name.
she had changed it from Monica Carlson, yes.
Right. And I'm going to talk to you about that name change a little bit later. But when you met her and the two of you started this friendship, which blossomed into love, she was telling you about her life, right?
Yes.
And she had just come home from her first year of college.
I believe it was her first year in Marinette.
Marinette. Yeah, and she was studying art. You know, she was an artist.
Screen printing, yes.
She was living with her mom,
Yes.
and that was in Stanley, Wisconsin,
Yes.
which, although it's not in Eau Claire, it's certainly driving distance, meaning a person can drive back and forth between Eau Claire and Stanley easily in the same day, right?
Right.
What, 45 minutes, hour?
I never clocked it, but I would give it about that amount of time, yes.
Right, and you don't drive. I mean,
No.
you have a car that you use as a storage locker, but generally speaking, you don't drive, you're a bicycle guy.
I cycle, yeah.
Okay, so when you and Ezra would go places in a car, that would be her car because your car wasn't running.
Yeah, I didn't really run it for anything.
Okay, so she had the car,
Yeah,
you had the apartment.
yeah.
And when you met her, you also met her parents eventually, right?
Yes.
And you formed a bond really with her father.
Which father are we speaking of?
I'm talking about Joe Shane Carl.
Yes, Joe's, yep.
Joe, the man who adopted her.
Yes,
That's who she calls dad,
yes.
not a biological dad.
Negative, yeah.
Okay, she had never,
I'd never met her biological father.
she hadn't met him either, right?
As to my knowledge, no.
You met her father and you actually would confide things in her father. And by her father, I'm always referring to Joe Shane Carlin, just so we're clear, okay? You would confide in him, right?
From time to time, yeah.
You would tell him things about you and Ezra.
I would,
You would tell him concerns you had about Ezra.
I would.
And it was easy to bond with him man to man.
I mean, I bond pretty well with most people, but
But you did bond well with Joe Shane, right?
not like more than anyone else, but yes.
And he's about the same age as you.
Approximately, I'm assuming.
So one thing you knew about Ezra was that she was young and impressionable, right?
I wouldn't say impressionable, but she was young.
She was vulnerable.
She wasn't vulnerable.
You are more worldly than Ezra McCandless. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
Worldly isn't in like my age, yes. Like I've lived more of a life than her, yes.
You've traveled.
I've traveled,
You've been in the military.
been in the military,
You've gone outside the state of Wisconsin.
yes,
You've not only been to the redwoods, but to other places.
yes.
You've been to places that, for her, it's just a dream to have gone to some of those places, right?
I wouldn't say a dream. Everything's
A goal?
a goal, yeah.
Okay. And you wanted to protect Ezra, right?
I want to protect everyone.
Well, I'm talking about your relationship with Ezra, so that's what I want to say. In general, your relationship with her, you saw yourself as protecting her.
I saw myself as protecting her, yes.
Okay. And in fact, let me just say this. When Ezra moved back home after she left you,
Yes.
moved out of your house, there was an enormous amount of texting that went back and forth between you and her.
Yes.
Right? She didn't have a cell phone that she could just pick up her cell phone and call you and talk.
She could.
Well, she didn't have a cell phone. There was a house phone at her parents', but her mode of communication was an iPod at that time.
She
right?
could call through the text app, or she could text through the text app.
Okay, but she needed Wi-Fi to do that.
Yes.
And through the Instagram text app, there was a constant, the last few weeks of March, before everything happened here, there was a lot of texting between you and her.
Yes.
And during that texting, one of the things that you said to her on March 11th is, well, your Instagram name is the Doc Wolf,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And you said to her, I'm a wolf protecting a fawn.
I don't recall that specifically, but if I can look at it.
Okay.
What Instagram page, Council?
I'm about to bring it over to you. That would be page 1189.
That's okay, I'll just pull it up here, thank you.
Okay, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 687.
Where are we at?
Wish I had a pen, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So like before, we read from the bottom up.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And so if you go here to about 2/3 of the way up the page, the date is March 11th. Do you see that?
I see that.
And you are the author, the Doc Wolf,
That is
right?
me.
I'm a wolf protecting a fawn.
Yeah, I see that.
And then the next thing you wrote to her is, or a fox with another.
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, I'll just display this to the jury. I'd move in Exhibit 687.
Any objection to Exhibit 687? I would ask that it be shown in its entirety, not just an isolated message.
That's fine. I have no problem with that.
And how many pages would be the entire?
It's one page, page 1189. Oh, this has to be worn up.
All right, that'll be
Warm up, excuse me.
received. 687 received.
Okay.
May
So
publish.
starting at the bottom of that page, it starts with her saying to you, that is true, right?
Whatever the context of that is.
Okay. And then there's something that's a text, but it's just a bunch of empty boxes.
Probably emojis.
What?
They're probably emojis. I think that's how they show up.
Oh, okay. So we can't really tell what those are, right?
No, negative.
And she's talking to you about making love to you. She says, I'm a garden when I'm making love to you. Right?
Yes.
That's the next thing she says. And then the next thing she says is, as cheesy and dumb as I am. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's after that that you say, I'm a wolf protecting a fawn,
Yes.
or a fox with another.
Yes.
And then you say to her, the first is a little odd.
What is a little?
Oh, I'm sorry. I should move the page down. My apologies.
Probably referring to the wolf protecting a fawn.
Well, it's your words. I
That's
don't-
what. Yeah, my words are probably saying a wolf protecting a fawn is the first is probably a little odd.
Okay, nothing further. Move in 687.
It's been received.
Thank you. So, let me just say something about you and protecting. You're a medic
Yes.
in the military, right?
Yes.
And that means that your job is to heal people.
My job is to do no further harm. That's our credo.
Okay, we all know the first words of doctors or the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm, right?
Yes.
Okay, but within that, do no harm, it goes more than that. It also goes to try and treat people and heal people if you can.
But it's not our job to fix people.
Your job is to fix their wounds when you're a medic in the military.
Fix their wounds, but people aren't like bicycles. You can't fix somebody.
Fair enough. but you can fix certain parts, right?
You can help them and you can give them options, but it's their own choice to fix their lives or themselves.
Okay, I'm talking about wounds, like when somebody cuts themselves as a medic and they need stitches, you can stitch them up in the military,
To the best of your abilities, depending on like your care level, yes.
Okay. And you, to some extent, wanted to do that with Ezra.
I wanted to see her grow. I wanted to see, I knew she was capable of many things, so I saw potential in her, especially her art.
Okay, so you thought she was a good artist?
Yeah, I thought she was exceptional for the amount of effort she had to put in. The results were like exceptional, you know.
She was young, but she was a really good artist.
She was very good.
She was too young to go to a bar, but she was certainly a good artist, right?
Yes, yeah.
Now, sometimes when you would go with Ezra and she was driving the car, she would get very anxious. Fair?
She had, I wouldn't call it PTSD, but she had anxiety that dealt with.
Okay. You're a medic, not a psychiatrist,
No,
right?
I'm not.
Not a psychologist, right? So it would be fair to say, with all due respect to you, sir, that you're not really in a position to diagnose post-traumatic stress disorder.
No, I'm not diagnosing.
Okay, right. That's somebody with one of those training and those degrees are the people who have to do that, right?
Yes, could I say anxiety?
All right. You did?
Okay,
You can say whatever you want. I'm just asking questions.
Roger.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, except for things the judge says you can't testify about. All
Within
right.
limits. Still getting used to this.
Okay, we get that. When she would get emotional in the car and was driving, sometimes you would take over the driving, right?
At times, it wasn't
Yes.
safe otherwise.
Pardon me?
It wouldn't be safe otherwise.
Right, and she would say to you, I want you to take over, Jason. I don't want to drive.
Yes,
She was emotional, and you would do that. You would take over and you would drive her car, right?
yes.
Okay, so you certainly have a driver's license, even though you didn't have a
Yeah,
vehicle.
I just did, I prefer not to drive.
Okay, but you would do it when she wanted you to, right?
For our safety, yes.
And that happened more than once.
I would say it was a limited amount of occasions, but it wasn't like it happened all the time when she drove.
No, it just happened when she got very emotional or there was some touchy and anxious things going on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me ask you some questions about Racy's. You'd been, when you met Ezra McCandless, you'd been part of the Racy's crowd for quite a while, right?
I wouldn't know how long, but yeah, I was there for quite a bit.
But she was a newbie to Racy's.
Yeah, we kind of, through our friendship, she was inducted into the crew.
Into the crew. The crew there is not uniform, right?
No,
There's differences of opinion,
many.
and although many people are friendly, not everybody is equally friendly to each other, right?
I would say there is an amount of cattiness, but there's always respect, I guess.
Okay, so about this cattiness, I mean, the way you talked about races yesterday, you almost seemed like you were referring to it as like a family, right?
Oh, definitely.
And sometimes in families, there are tensions and people don't like each other all the time.
Yeah, but you always love each other.
And even then, people sometimes gossip, right?
Gossip.
Racy's was gossipy, wasn't it?
Yes,
There's a lot of he said, she said stuff going on there, right?
yes,
And to use an old cliche, like the game telephone, where one person repeats something to another, you know,
lost in translation.
lost in translation, not bad intent, but the facts get turned around a little bit, right?
Yes,
And sometimes people think somebody did something wrong, but they're wrong because they've just heard too much gossip. Fair enough?
fair.
Okay. And so Ezra was newer, but not everybody there. A lot of people really liked her, but not everybody. Fair?
I mean, to my knowledge, she was pretty well received.
All right. Now, yesterday you testified about things that happened with John, right?
John Hanson,
John Hanson.
yes.
Yes. And I'm going to come back to that later, but one of the things that happened, after you talked to John Hanson, well, you got on the phone with him and he told you he'd never had sex with Ezra, right?
Yes.
And he went around Racy's telling that to people too.
I can't know if he did that or not, but I don't know. It just seems, I can't.
But you knew when he first told you that he had denied having sex with Ezra, right?
Yes,
And he certainly, in your opinion, didn't want to be seen as having sex with your girlfriend out in public, right?
in that first interaction, he admitted to it at the end of it, though.
At the end of it, but initially he denied it, right?
Initially, he denied it.
And you heard through Josh Trankler that he was denying it to other people too.
I believe I might have. I don't recall specifically, but
Okay. Let me ask you some questions about the abortion. I know it's a tough subject, okay?
yes.
When you found out she was pregnant, that was a time of stress and turmoil in the relationship. Is that fair to say?
I wouldn't say it was stressful. It was just, it was a situation where she was having a hard time getting her footing, holding an occupation, and then she was sick. So I just wanted to know, like, how I could help.
She was sick and she had lost a lot of weight,
Yes,
right? She was vomiting every day.
yes.
Neither one of you knew why,
No, I didn't know
right?
for sure.
It was kind of exceptional. And before she even went to the doctor, she got a home pregnancy test.
I did not know this, though.
Okay, so when before she got the abortion, or about the abortion, there wasn't that much communication between the two of you about it, right?
About what?
The abortion, in advance.
Why would there be communication about?
I don't know, I can't answer questions about what happened with other people, I wasn't there. But
What I'm stating is if I didn't know she was pregnant, why would we be talking about abortions?
I'm talking about once you knew she was pregnant.
There was no conversation.
There was no conversation.
She asked for paperwork from the nurse, and I shut my mouth.
She was actually under the impression that you did not want her
Objection
to have
calls
the
for
baby.
speculation. Sustained.
Mr. Mengal, in the middle of March, you were interviewed by Detective Prock, right?
I was interviewed by a lot of people, so
Okay, I'm not talking about after Alex died, I'm talking about before Alex died.
during the
Okay.
investigation, or
When, in the middle of March, after what John had done to Ezra came to light, you were interviewed by the police.
yes,
Right, and the person who interviewed you was Detective Ryan Prock.
yes,
Same detective who is sitting in court today,
Yes.
correct? I'd ask the record to reflect, and he's sitting here behind the prosecution table with a black suit.
The record will so reflect.
Okay. Oh, I wanted to reflect that he's identified, that Mr. Mengal has identified Detective Prock.
Okay, well, all right.
Thank you.
Is that your understanding, sir?
yeah, I understand.
Okay, then the record will reflect he's identified him. I was just letting the record reflect that Detective Prock has been allowed to remain in court throughout the trial.
When you talked to Detective Prock, you gave him background information about your relationship with Ezra McCandless, right?
Yes,
He was asking you questions and you were giving him answers, right?
yes,
You were filling him in on things that had happened between you and Ezra,
yes,
about the ups and downs of your relationship with her.
yes,
And in the course of filling him in, what you told Detective Prock is that Ezra thought for sure you
Objection
didn't
calls for
want-
speculation.
It's what
Hold
he's,
on, just stop. Ho. The follow-up question will. Okay, well, yeah, this question is, I'm not going to sustain the objection to this question, but if
but the
going down.
question's almost done, if I can just finish it, and there
you
is
go
no
ahead and finish
follow-up
the question.
Okay? What you told Detective Prock on that day,
I'm going to object on hearsay grounds, Judge. Sustained on hearsay.
can I have a sidebar, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sustained.
Now, Mr. Mengal, when she had the abortion, that was traumatic to her, right?
Yes.
And I think yesterday you talked about how during the abortion, she didn't want you to be in the room, right?
Yeah, she changed her mind on the way there.
You had come in as the supportive boyfriend, right?
Yes.
But she did not want you to be a witness to this destruction of life.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Judge, can we approach? Counsel, do you want to bring VVV with you again?
I can do that.
All right.
You may answer as to what.
I'm going to repeat
Go ahead,
the
rephrase the question.
Yeah, let me just do that. So, Mr. Mengal, when you drove her and you said she changed her mind, right?
Yes.
So you said to her, do you not want me there? You said something like that, right?
To that, yeah.
And what she said was, I don't want you to see any of this stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Now, after this abortion, which was traumatic to her, she wanted you near her, right? Not during the abortion, but in the aftermath, in the relationship.
Yeah.
You went to sleeping on the couch, right?
At times, yes.
Okay. But what you told us yesterday was when you were sleeping on the couch, she wanted you to be with her in the bed, right?
Yes.
She wanted your comfort.
Yes.
She wanted your love.
Yes.
And there were times when you felt that you needed to separate yourself from her. Fair?
Yeah. Yes.
And one of the things that you did, in fact, after this abortion, you even thought she was going through like postpartum depression over it, right?
Yeah.
And you went on this trip to clear your head with your friend Josh Trinkler, right? And when you went with Josh Trinkler, I think you told us the whole plane route and the redwoods and how that was a great space for you, right?
Yeah.
And it could have been longer than a week that you went away, right?
I mean, with travel time, I'm not completely sure on the,
You don't have a calendar showing the exact dates, right?
no, I think I wrote it down, but I don't have an exact recollection.
Well, yesterday in court, I don't want you to take this as attacking you at all, but, you just made a mistake when you said how long you were gone for military duty in February. You remembered it was 2 or 3 weeks, when it was really only 9 days, February 5th to the 14th, right?
Yes.
So similarly, this trip that you took with Josh Trankler out to the redwoods, out to nature, it was kind of a spiritual reawakening for you. Would you say that?
I wouldn't say spiritual, it is just
Personal?
personal.
Fair? Could have been longer than just a week that you were gone.
It could have been.
Okay. So you're gone, you're in the redwoods, and she's home alone, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask you some questions about Alex, all right?
Alexander Woodworth.
Alexander Woodworth. Thank you for clarifying that. Well, you had an Alexander Zink who was your roommate, right?
Yes.
Alexander Woodworth was somebody you knew as part of the Racy's crowd.
Yes.
He was a guy who would sit in the corner reading books and writing in journals.
Often, yes.
And he was often kind of almost like a loner to himself a lot, right?
I wouldn't call him a loner.
Well, not when he was working. He was a sociable guy, but he liked to spend time with himself writing in his notebooks.
Yeah, he would have headphones and stuff in a lot. It's kind of like it's an implied task, I guess you could say, if you're at a coffee shop studying or doing some work and you have earphones in, you're working on something.
He would write journals.
Often, yes.
You saw copies of those journals?
Briefly at bars from time to time, he would show me his works.
He didn't read you long passages, right?
He didn't like recite them to me, but he would let me read them.
And you found his writings very painful, right?
Well, he's a philosopher.
And he expressed what you called entropy, disorder, and pain in his writings. That was your impression.
I would say he had a specific eye for the world, and we don't always see it through the same lens. I can't really speculate.
But his writings, you're not a nihilist, right?
No,
And he was a nihilist.
I can't say that he was anything.
Well, you thought some of his writings were really brutal, didn't you?
I thought that, but I'm also not trained. I'm not like an English professor.
Right. I'm just talking about your impression. I'm not trying to get you to be a professor,
Okay.
okay? His writings were very personal sometimes.
Yeah, they're very personal.
They were not just philosophy in the abstract like a professor would teach a class. They were about him and his feelings quite a bit, seen through the philosophy lens, right?
I don't know if he was always referring these things to himself. I don't think people always have to write about themselves.
Okay, whatever you think about what people always have to write, some of Alex's writings were personal, right? And painful.
I wouldn't know. Like I didn't ask him if these were personal memoirs. It never stated his name. Like,
Right, he didn't say, I, Alex Woodworth, believe blah, blah, blah in his journals, but he would use the word I at various times, right?
well, if you're writing a narrative, you have to have a narrator, right?
I don't know, I'm not a writer.
I'm just assuming that's how it works.
He certainly didn't tell you about anything he wrote in his journals concerning Ezra and McCandless, right?
No, I had no impressions about any of that stuff.
I mean, that wasn't something he was going to share with you, right?
I would assume not, no.
And when you would read them, you would find his writings brutal and pessimistic sometimes.
When we're talking about when I viewed his writings, this is far before him and Ezra McCandless's relations. Our friendship kind of lost touch, and we weren't as there wasn't much camaraderie, I guess. We still talked, we were still respectful of each other, but he didn't reach out as much as he used to.
And in other words, he wasn't really comfortable about opening up about his life with you. Fair to say?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Can I approach?
Yes. Okay. Objection is overruled,
Okay.
and the witness may answer in the manner discussed at sidebar.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. I'll repeat the question because we've probably all forgotten it by now. What you felt, you never felt like Alex was comfortable opening up with you completely about what happened in his childhood and his life. He had other friends for that, right? That's how you felt.
I think he had other confidants that were much closer, yes.
So your answer to my question is yes.
Yes.
You talked yesterday about Ezra and Alex, and what you said was you believed they both shared a painful and traumatic history with each other, right?
I wouldn't say they both shared a painful traumatic history, I guess, but
Well, that they shared their personal pain and trauma with each other. That's what you said in court yesterday, right?
I might have said that, but I can't remember.
You don't remember your exact words, but
No.
you're not denying that you said that yesterday.
No, they had
Fair.
commonality, I guess you could say.
I'm going to ask you some questions now about when Alex cut his wrists.
Yes.
All right? He cut his wrists, and Ezra called you over to treat it, right?
Yeah, she might have messaged me or called me, I can't recall.
Either way,
Yeah.
she's the one who got in touch with you,
Yes,
right? And she asked you to come and help Alex because he had slit his wrist.
yes.
You went over there and you saw the mark, right?
I believe it was
You think it was the right wrist?
I can't recall specifically. but
Okay. Whichever wrist it is, the mark that he made when he slit his wrist, went across his wrist, correct?
Yeah, which is uncommon for, look, I'm not going to give my medical.
You're not a suicide
Yeah,
expert.
no, I'm not.
Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Your belief is that that gesture would be a cry for help, as
Yes.
opposed to actually one wanting to do away with
And I,
themselves.
I spoke with him about it, yes.
Okay. And when you talked to him about it, he was playing it off to you like it was an accident, right?
Yes, he said he had been.
He was drunk, a knife slipped, something like that, right?
He didn't realize the sharpness is what he said.
But you weren't buying that.
No.
You saw it and you're like, you knew from your training experience, this is no accident.
Judge, I'm going to
This happened.
object. The defense counsel's made clear that he's not an expert in this area, so he shouldn't be giving an opinion on that.
It's a lay opinion.
Sustained. Well,
All right. In your
we're not
lay
allowing
opinion.
lay opinions.
Okay. What?
We're not allowing lay opinions with respect to certain areas.
Oh, I
And,
thought that was about emotional states, not actions. But I'll move on, Judge, if you want me to.
Please,
Thank you.
thank you.
What you said to Alex, well, first of all, yesterday I believe you described these wounds as shallow, right?
Yeah, it wasn't very far past, those are the
You remember, you've been through, after Mr. Woodward died, you had a couple of different interviews with police officers, correct?
correct.
And when you were interviewing, you remember talking to Investigator Dykus and Investigator Meyer?
Were they the Dunn County sheriffs?
Yes. Do you
Yeah,
remember speaking with them, even if you may not remember their names?
I remember speaking with detectives from Dunn County, yes.
And do you recall telling Investigator Dykus, when talking about this, that Alex's wound to his wrist was very deep?
Very deep?
Your words, yes.
I might have said it was in the marbling or something, I don't recall saying very deep, but.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's a transcript that's been prepared of that interview. All right? And I'm just going to direct your attention. This is page 55.
I see this.
All right, yes. You're talking to
Yeah, I see this.
Investigator Dykus, right? And he's asking you about Alex's attempted suicide, right?
I'm sorry, counsel, what line are you looking at?
Page, line 16. And
I'm,
page 55, line 16.
there are two interviews with the same officers. And
That's FFFFF.
Thank you.
What you said to Investigator Dykus in talking about it is because, like, it was very deep, correct?
That's what it says on the transcript.
You might not remember, but you know you were being recorded when you talked to him, right?
Yes,
Okay. And you were aware that Alex had, like, played it off to you, right? As something else, right?
he said it was, yeah.
And
Excellent.
at work, he told people it was a steam wand injury from making coffee, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
It's not speculative, Judge. Do you want
That's
me to
hearsay.
Go
Well-
over the transcript. I have an argument, I can make it sidebar about its admissibility.
So is it, are you asking him about what Mr. Woodworth had said? Or what he had heard in terms of what other people said Alex said?
Let me just double check, okay?
Okay.
Let me just say this. You had given Mr. Woodworth something to wrap around the wound to keep it clean, right?
Yeah, I gave him equipment to maintain it.
Right. And he went to work with that covering, right?
Objection, again, it calls for speculation or it's hearsay.
Well, I think it's a lack of, foundation as to personal knowledge. Does he?
Did you know that he had gone to work you had wrapped it, correct?
I had wrapped it, yes.
You had given him Dermabond.
I used some kind of thing to,
Okay. And then you had wrapped it to keep it clean, right?
yes.
But important to keep a wound clean.
Yeah, I irrigated and cleaned it.
All right. And you were told, or did you know personally, that he had gone to work with it wrapped up?
I had heard he was wearing a dressing, but I don't know if it was the same dressing that I
Okay.
had.
And you heard people at Racy's talk about what he said about his wound,
I'm going to
correct?
sustain on hearsay.
Thank you.
I'd like to approach.
Okay. Is sustained?
Fair to say that as far as you knew, Alex wasn't going around Racy's bragging about a suicide attempt, right?
Not to my knowledge.
And fair to say, as far as you knew, Alex wasn't going around Racy's saying, I'm having a relationship with Ezra McCandless, right?
I mean, I don't know, but I would assume he wouldn't do the same thing.
And you, however, let me just say this. After this happened, Ezra McCandless said he sliced his wrist because she wouldn't leave you for Alex. She told you that, right?
Yes, she said.
And she told you that, and you knew about Alex way before February of 2018.
What are you implying?
You knew that Alex Woodward was having a relationship with Ezra McCandless before February when you had your encounter with him at Racy's.
I had impressions that they had become very close. I wasn't fully
Well-
I had an idea that something was going on.
You had a roommate, Alex Zink, who was telling you Ezra wasn't coming home at night when you were out of town, right?
Well, she would be telling me one thing and then other people.
But I'm asking what Alex Zink told you. He would tell you she wasn't coming home at night, correct?
The nights that she said she was at the house, he said she was not.
And in fact, what he said to you, you talked to Detective Dykus about this, correct?
I might have, yes.
When you talked to Alex and you believed it was a suicide attempt, you said to him, look, you were telling him not to do this, right?
I asked him if he needed help, if I should call somebody.
One of the things you said to him is,
Sorry,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
asked him if he needed help and I didn't get your last word.
If I should call somebody or if he wanted to see.
and you said to him, look, you only get one shot at this.
Yes,
And by one shot at this, you didn't mean one shot at slitting his wrist, you meant one shot at life.
at life, yes.
Now, you talked about this with investigators Dykus and Meyer, right? You talked to them a couple of different
I
times,
talked to
right?
so many law enforcement agents.
It's a little
but
hard
yes,
for you to remember
it's all-
exactly. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. It's all like a soup of conversations.
Okay, so in the soup of conversation, some of the soup of this conversations you had were shortly after Ezra was in the hospital and Alex Woodward had been discovered to be deceased, right?
Before and after he was discovered, yes.
Okay. All right. And you had a conversation with these investigators on March 27th, so 5 days after you last saw Alex, right?
I'm sure I probably did.
Madam Clerk, can you turn it to my computer, please?
And Judge, we will mark and move to admit this later. We'll tie this up afterwards for the record.
Is the
But
state
this-
aware of what it is?
Yes.
Yes, assuming,
It's
I believe
DOJ.
council's going to play the audio portion of the transcript she showed me. I don't have an objection to that portion being played.
That's all we're gonna play. Okay, so just for the record, this is what the state has provided as GOJW, and we are playing from 16 minutes and 12 seconds to 17 minutes and 6 seconds. This is an interview by investigators Dicus, D-I-C-U-S, and Meyer, M-A-Y-E-R, of Jason Mengal on March 27th.
President Flip.
Okay.
He had said that, I mean, I bandaged him up once when he slit his wrist.
Okay.
Because he said, if you don't leave him, I'm going to kill myself.
What do you mean leave him? Was he talking about you? Okay.
So, like, I went over to the house, and this was months ago, I can't remember when, but I
Okay.
had cleaned up his wound and bandaged him all up, and I sat and had a talk with him about, do we need to go in and do something?
Yeah.
People are not going to understand that this was an act, because he said, I got drunk and I accidentally cut myself with a knife that I got for Christmas. And I was like, this is a really weird place to accidentally cut yourself.
Where was that at then? On the wrist? Okay.
And I was like, this is not a place you accidentally cut yourself out.
Okay.
And he's like, no, you have to believe me, it was just an accident. And I was holding his hands. Like, I knew he was cheating on me. I knew what was going on.
Okay.
Like, relationship-wise. I didn't kick her out. I didn't be mean to him. Like,
Okay.
in public. We were still all friends. I
Okay.
just knew there were two people that...
It went a line beyond that. But
And do you know what the time stamp was when it completed?
Mr. Nelson probably does.
Judge, I started playing it at 16:12 when I pressed pause at 17:06. I think you can see it on the screen there.
Oh, okay. Well, then that was the correct time.
Very good, thank you.
So, in other words, you're talking to investigator Dicus 5 days after Alex is gone, and you're telling him months ago you knew that she was cheating on you and you didn't kick her out.
I think at that time, I knew there was something going on, but now that I had the relevant facts, it all made sense. Like, I started to see the signs of, like, you know, the red people wear the rose-colored glasses, and you just assume, like, oh, she wasn't lying about this, or she was actually at the...
What you told investigator Dicus is what we heard your words on the tape. Correct, Mr. Mengal? There's no arguing with you said that, right?
But I'm also speaking at...
Mr. Mengal, there's no arguing with the fact that you said that, right?
No.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude, but I want to move on. One of the things that okay, excuse me 1 second, Your Honor. Just don't want to get my pages confused. You smoked cigarettes, right?
Yes,
And so did Mr. Woodward?
yes.
And I guess you probably can't smoke in Racy's, but you go outside to smoke, right? There's no smoking inside the establishment
No, it's not
itself.
inside the establishment.
But it's common to go outside and have a smoke.
It's common.
And you would bum cigarettes from Alex.
We'd bump from each other.
And when you would go bum a smoke from him, you didn't do it just because you wanted a cigarette. You did it for other reasons, didn't you?
What are you implying?
Well, you would say to yourself in your head, yeah, like you're taking things of mine and I'll just take some things of yours. That's what was in your head, right?
No.
All right. Again, you talked to investigators Dicus and Meyer twice, right?
Yes.
Mr. Mengal, when you talked to those investigators, it was a long interview, both times, right?
All the times it was long, yes.
And it was long and you filled in lots and lots of details, right?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
I mean, you even went into details sometimes about like whether you had pizza.
Yeah, I rant sometimes.
Okay.
It's not uncommon.
And when you were talking, you were truthful with the police, right?
To the best of my knowledge.
You weren't trying to lie to the police.
I had nothing to hide.
And what you said in this truthful conversation with the police about finding out about Ezra seeing Alex is you said you had found out through the grapevine, right?
Judge, may we approach?
All right.
Mr. Mengal, I'm going to show you what's marked as 689. I'm sorry for being repetitive.
No, you're fine.
This is a transcript of your conversation with investigators Dicus and Meyer, right?
This was done exclusively the day when I had the conversation with him and Hanson. It's not like this was a regular, I would bum smokes from him to be mean.
Okay, well,
That's not the context.
I didn't hear that.
That was out of context, I was saying.
What-
This was specifically the day where I talked with Hanson and Alexander Woodward outside of Racy's.
And what you told investigated Dykus was that you were, pardon my language, kind of a dick about bumming the cigarettes,
Yeah,
right? You
just
said
this
that.
one day, yeah, I was kind of rude.
But I'm talking about the one day, I'm talking about what
Yes.
you said, okay? And you said you know, and again, pardon my language, after you said you were kind of a dick about it, you said you were expressing what was in your head, not what you had said to Alex Woodworth, right?
Yeah,
Like, you're taking things of mine, and I'll just take something of yours, man, right?
yeah,
You
that's
told
what
that to the police, right?
I believe I even stated that to Alexander, but
Oh, okay. Now, when you had your confrontation with Mr. Woodward, all right, 1 second. Let me- All right, so it's fair to say, given all of this, that you knew, you may not have had a videotape, Ezra McCandless may not have told you, but you really knew that she and Alex were seeing each other, and you knew it for a while before February.
I was in denial, yes.
You knew it in your gut,
Yes,
right? And you didn't kick her out,
no.
right, back in December. And let me ask you some questions now. And actually, when you went and talked to Alex in February, Ezra had already moved out of your house, right?
I believe she was already moved out, yes.
We'll come back to that. I'm going to ask you some questions now about John Hanson,
Okay,
all right? When you described John as a very good friend of yours, right?
yes.
Unlike Alex, who's somebody you were more remote with.
We were still good friends, but not as close.
You felt very betrayed that John had sex with your girlfriend, right?
It wasn't betrayal as the situation.
Well, it was the situation that he assaulted her, right?
Yeah, the accusation,
Right.
that's what made me.
And you used that word a lot yesterday. You said he assaulted her, he assaulted her. You used that word when you were talking about it, right?
That's what the defendant had told me.
That's, okay. That's Miss McCandless, okay? The
Ezra
state may
McCandless.
want to call her the defendant. I'm calling her Ezra McCandless,
Roger,
all right? Which was the name you always called her by, right?
always.
And when you were friends with John, you know that John Hanson and Alex Woodworth were close with each other, right?
Can you repeat that question?
John Hanson and Alex Woodworth, they were close with each other.
Yeah, very close.
They were very good friends, right?
They had similar literature tastes.
They had similar literature tastes and similar philosophies, right?
I would say like point counterpoint a lot of times. They were good company to keep.
Well, they were both into nihilism, right?
I can't be sure what they were I understood some of the teachings and the readings they read were of specific genres, but I'm not sure if they were actually nihilists.
Well, your feelings about them and the impressions of them was that,
Judge, I'm going to object on opinion and foundation grounds.
I have a foundation, like I do for everything else.
A sustain on the opinion about, what their philosophies were, what their beliefs were.
All right. You talked to Investigator Dykus, right?
I believe so, yes.
And you told Investigator Dykus
Judge,
that
I'm gonna
the
object
only
on a-
rules were like no
Opinion,
rules.
Judge.
Okay, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I guess I don't know. Why don't we finish the question so that I know what the objection is?
Can we have a sidebar?
Okay.
Okay, look, you knew that Ezra McCandless was spending time with John and Alex, right?
Yes,
and that they would be talking to her about their philosophies, right?
that's what she stated, yes, they're.
Okay. And you felt that she was young and impressionable, and you were concerned about that, right?
I mean, I'm sure at times I thought some of the readings were heavy.
Well, again, you talked to investigators Dykus and Meyer, right?
Yes,
In the second interview? And just to refresh your memory.
Judge, I don't think he needs his memory refreshed. He answered the
Okay.
question.
Well,
I think
I
he
don't
did.
think
Not
you quite said
entirely,
it.
but he answered the question that he has acknowledged now that he thought she was impressionable.
Okay, so you thought she was young and impressionable, right?
for literature tastes, I think everybody's impressionable for different things.
I'm asking about Ezra McCandless, not everybody, okay? That's what the trial's about. You felt she was young and impressionable.
You're asking for my opinion?
In her discussions about philosophy with Alex and John, you felt she was young and impressionable, correct?
I guess, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, and in fact, you even told that to the police when they interviewed you, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sure.
Now, speaking of John, you testified about this chokehold thing yesterday, right?
Yes,
And you've been in the military, right?
yes,
You've learned self-defense maneuverisms, have
Yes.
you? As part of it? And how to do a chokehold if you need to do a chokehold to somebody?
yeah, they teach like different fighting styles.
I mean, you, like, you're a man, you can handle yourself with this, right?
I mean, yeah, I'm fine.
You're about 6 feet tall,
About.
right? John is about as tall as you, roughly.
Roughly, yes.
Alex is about as tall as you, roughly.
A little bit shorter, but about.
Right, but maybe like 5'11" or so.
Well, Judge, I guess,
And
Is there an objection or withdrawal?
first of all, this is Mr. Hahn's witness.
I know, I apologize, thank you.
All right.
John would, so if somebody puts you in a chokehold, for example, you have the training about how to get out of it, right?
Minimal, I mean, we have combative training, but I don't like do refreshers on it or anything.
Well, you wouldn't appreciate being just put in a chokehold by somebody because they've been drinking, right?
Objection relevance.
I mean, you,
Judge,
Sustained.
all right, you wouldn't appreciate just being put in a chokehold.
objection
right?
relevance.
All right, let me
Sustained.
rephrase that. You could handle it yourself if put in a chokehold.
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
All right. John would go around and put people in chokeholds, right?
I mean, to my knowledge, people had practiced things with him before, yes.
Well, he would go around to parties and just go up to people and put them in chokeholds, right?
Not without consent.
He talked about it doing his self-defense seminar, right?
I wouldn't call it like a self-defense seminar. He cared for people too, and if he saw someone who,
I didn't ask you that question.
Okay.
What I asked you, and I don't mean to be rude, but I would like you to answer the questions that I'm asking, okay?
Yes.
He would randomly grab people by the throat and say, break out, right?
Objection lack of foundation.
Sustained on foundation.
VVV, page 9.
She still needs to ask the question to get the foundation in. It doesn't matter if it's in a transcript. Judge, at this break,
Well,
I
hold
think Mr. Mengal may need water.
Get some water?
uh,
Okay.
Sure. All right, you walked by your apartment once after getting coffee, and you were outside having a smoke, right?
yes,
And you saw John choking Ezra McCandless, right?
it was like a bar, an arm bar of some sort or something.
What, choke is probably in a
It's a vague
headlock,
term, yeah.
right? I mean, choking is something that happens inside a person's throat.
Objection, not a question.
It is a
Sustained.
question, but, all right. So you were outside smoking, and you're thinking, boy, John's doing one of those stupid self-defense seminars that he does, right?
Well, in my mind, it didn't seem like she was in danger or anything.
But you've seen him do it at parties before, right?
I've seen him do it with friends before, yes.
And like, you would be drinking, and you would see John just randomly grab somebody by the throat and say, come on, break out of it. You would see that happen with him at parties, right?
I've seen it before, but you have to understand the the relationships between the two parties were different from each other.
Perhaps I can refresh your memory by referring to the transcript, VVV, page 9.
Judge, I don't think he
Line
said,
14.
I don't think he said he needs his memory refreshed.
Agreed. I don't think he.
Have you forgotten that you told the police that John would just randomly grab somebody by the throat?
I've talked to the police a lot, and this is
All right.
over 2 years ago,
Would this help refresh your memory if you looked at what you said?
possibly.
And I'm sorry, counsel, I missed the transcript and the page number.
Page 9, starting around line 11.
On which transcript?
I'm sorry, VVV.
Thank you.
Where are we at?
I'm showing you what's been marked, or not marked, I'm showing you VVV, which is your transcript of your interview with, on March 12th with Detective Prock.
For the
Okay.
assault?
Yes, this is when you talked to Detective Prock before Alex passed away, right?
Right.
And you were specifically talking about John with Detective Prock, right? Is that right? And what you told Detective Brock, just take a look at that,
Yes.
all right?
This is like, this sentence says, because I've heard,
No, and then
hang on.
the next words you said
Whoa, whoa,
were
whoa,
I've
whoa, whoa.
seen.
Hang on. So if you show it to him to refresh his recollection, now see if his recollection is refreshed. He can't be reading from it.
This remind you?
this reminds me, yes.
Okay, and it reminds you that you've said, I've seen him do it at parties.
It says I've heard, I've seen him do it
Okay,
at
let me
parties.
just show this to
The
see if
sentence
you
doesn't-
can further refresh your recollection.
Yep, the sentence doesn't make sense.
Okay, the sentence doesn't make sense, but you're not disagreeing that these are your words, correct?
These are my words, but if you take out one word, it changes the whole sentence's context.
John was a heavy drinker back.
Objection relevance.
Justine?
I'd like to come to sidebar about that. Mr. May,
Yes.
did you tell the police that you had seen John do this at parties? Did you tell that to the police?
I believe that I had seen this happen, but I don't understand what the question is here.
All right, I'll play the tape.
Judge, I don't think there's a foundation to impeach. He just said that he had seen this happen. And that's what,
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be disagreeing.
So you've seen him randomly grab people when you guys had been drinking together, right? That's what you told the police?
This wasn't like exclusively at parties. I'm saying there
At
was.
parties. Correct, at parties. That's what I'm asking about. I'm asking you specifically, you've seen
I've
him
read the statement.
do this unexpectedly to people at parties,
It
right?
doesn't say unexpectedly.
Okay. Randomly grabbing somebody that's by the throat, in your opinion, is not unexpected?
objection, opinion,
Is it
improper
expected?
opinion.
Sustained.
Right. When you personally use the word randomly, you mean somebody just goes up to somebody and does something, right?
It's a military training thing. So I think what you're conjuring at is there's
I'm not
different.
conjuring anything, I'm only trying to quote your words.
Yes, there's a
Right?
difference between,
So your interpretation
Judge,
of the word randomly is different than mine, that's
I'm-
what you're trying to tell me?
I'm going to ask that the witness be allowed to answer the question.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead and answer the question, sir.
there's a difference between him doing it to someone who's prior service or a friend that he's experienced or boxed with. Like my roommate, Alexander Zink, was an MMA fighter. So there's a difference between doing that randomly, being like in a jokish boy horseplay manner than what you're trying to say.
Okay. Ezra McCandless, when he did that, she's 5'2", right?
Yes.
He's going up to her and doing this to her in early February,
Judge, I'm going to,
Right?
I'll withdraw the question, the objection.
right?
Okay.
She's not an MMA fighter,
No.
she's not in the military,
No.
right?
No.
She doesn't have military training, right?
No.
Or MMA,
MMA.
MMA, sorry, I don't watch it. She doesn't have that kind of training, right?
No.
And she's just a short, slender woman who he was doing this to.
She had requested this before, though.
That was your opinion?
No, she had stated that
She
she
wa-
requested You should teach me how to box.
Oh, she wanted some self-defense training.
She had talked to him about it.
Okay. Choking somebody is not boxing, is it?
It depends on what you're trying to defend yourself from.
Well, commonly we talk about boxing as something you have gloves and you're punching, right?
Yes, but
Okay. Now, you went on military duty on February 5th, and you know this because you kept a calendar, right?
at the time of the incident, yeah, I wrote down a lot of hard dates.
So when John assaulted Ezra, that didn't happen until after you left for military duty. It didn't happen before you went, right?
I don't recall a specific date, but
You weren't in town.
I was not in town.
You had actually asked John to look after Ezra, right?
Yeah, I trusted my friends.
Pardon me?
I trusted my friends.
Right. You trusted your friends, and the very next day, he has sex with her, right?
I didn't know this at the time, no. But
I know you didn't know it at the time, but you came to find out it was the very next day, right?
I found out what she had said, yes.
And you found out that there was a repeated incident on February 6th, the day after that,
That's
Right?
Yeah, that's what
and on February 7th, she moved out.
I believe so.
And in fact, basically, she had a phone call with you. You testified about that yesterday, right?
Which phone call?
When she moved out, she called you and told you she's moving out, right?
Yes, yeah,
And in your words, she dumped you.
pretty much.
Okay. And she expressed that she just couldn't stay with you anymore, right?
She said I could not be in that apartment.
Okay. So she says she couldn't be there. It's not till later till you find out why, right?
Later on, she said, yeah, it had to do with other things.
Okay. And to your knowledge, she moved back to Stanley, right?
I believe so.
Back to her mother's house, right?
She had sent me an image or so from her mother's house.
So you knew where she was, right?
I mean, I assumed it.
You knew Alex helped her move to Stanley?
Negative. I didn't know that.
All right. That's something you found out later.
Yes.
And so you're broken up at this point, right?
I was a little distraught, yes.
Well, it was more than a little distraught. I mean, this was somebody you thought about having a future with, as you said yesterday, right?
Yeah, I cared very much.
This was somebody you guys would joke around and like husband-wife stuff, right?
Yes.
And so you were distraught and you were looking for an explanation as to what happened.
Yeah, nothing made sense.
Okay, and that's why you went and looked at her Instagram, right?
I don't recall when I looked at her Instagram. It wasn't until later on.
Couple of weeks later, well, this incident with the police at Josh Trankler's, that happened on
Yeah.
February 26th, right?
Yes.
So if we go February 7th to February 26th, we're talking about like 2.5 weeks or so, between 2.5 weeks and 3 weeks later. Fair?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you look at her Instagram, right?
It might have been Instagram. Yeah.
You screenshotted it.
That was the text app, not the Instagram.
Okay, so you look at it and you screenshot it, right?
Yes.
All right. And after that, you're talking to her, right?
Yes.
She starts crying.
Yes.
She tells you what happened,
She
right?
told me a story.
She told you what she said happened, right?
And then she amended it after I talked with him on the phone.
Well, you called him and he said, no, I never had sex with her, right?
Yes, that's what he said.
And then he said, eventually he said he did have sex with her, right?
Eventually, yes.
And you were livid about that.
Well, because of the pretenses that she said it was under.
Well, your opinion is a pretense, but she told you that she was drunk, right?
She said she was intoxicated, yes.
Right. She's 20 years old. She's not supposed to be drinking legally yet, correct?
Correct.
She can't even go in a bar, right?
No.
Like the bar, the joint that you and all your friends would hang out with, she wasn't supposed to be in there, right?
Negative.
And
No.
at some point, she even got kicked out of there, right?
I had heard that from someone.
She wasn't like a big, heavy drinker. You didn't go around getting her drunk, right? You were spending lots of time with her. And so she was not somebody who drank a lot of alcohol all the time. Fair?
Not regularly.
Okay. And she tells you she is drunk to the point of throwing up and blacking out, right?
In the message?
When she talks to you. we went over this yesterday. She called it
Oh,
blackout
yes,
drunk,
yeah.
right? And yesterday, as you said, when she said she was blackout drunk, she woke up and thought something was going on with John and having sex with her, right?
She said something felt amiss, I guess.
She what?
Something felt amiss, I think she
Felt like
said.
something amiss, and then she goes to the bathroom, and as you said, women know.
Women, yeah,
Right.
that's my understanding.
Okay. I understand you haven't been there personally.
Negative.
And then she told you that she came back to your house and that something happened again in your bedroom, right?
Yes,
And she felt really bad about it, right?
I believe so.
And you wanted her to report it as a sexual assault, correct?
I didn't want her to do anything. I said, if this is what happened, then you need to report this.
Well, she told you facts, and then you told her that was a sexual assault, right?
What do you mean she told me facts?
She told you the facts about what happened.
Judge, I'm going to object, and if we need a sidebar, I'd be happy to expand.
Okay, sidebar. Objection sustained.
So just going back, you saw her Instagram, and then you said to her, look, I don't understand why you're still talking to someone who assaulted you. You said that to Ezra McCandless, right?
I believe I may have.
Okay. And then when you were talking to her, you urged her to report this, right?
I told her that if an assault happened, you're protecting the next person.
Right. So you urged her to report it, right?
I said, if this happened, you should probably report it.
It wasn't something that she came up with, it was something you came up with, right?
Well, I'm not saying that I coerced her into it. I said,
I'm not trying to say that you coerced her into doing that. If I gave you that impression, that's completely wrong. You urged her to report it. That's not coercing.
with her history of assaults that she had told me, I was,
All right, so you urged her to report it, right?
I didn't want the cycle to continue.
All right. So, and after you called John, you went over to Josh Trankler's, right?
Yes,
Your very close friend who you had gone on this retreat to the redwoods with,
yes.
and you went ballistic. Is that fair?
I needed someone to center me, and my roommate Alexander Zink wasn't around.
All right. You took Ezra over there with you.
Yes, we went together.
And when you got to Josh Trankler's, you were so mad, you were actually even making threats to kill John.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, not that you would have done it,
No,
but you were talking crazy.
that's
like
why I
that,
went
right?
to find counsel.
Okay, so you went to council, you've got figuratively steam coming out of your ears,
Yes.
right? Red in the face,
Red in the face.
to the point where Josh Trankler calls the police on you, one of his best friends.
I told him we need to get law enforcement involved in this.
Josh Trankler is the one who called the police, right?
Yes, I told him that,
He called the police because of your behavior.
I did not know that.
You didn't know that, but you later found out that's what happened.
I just now found out that that's what happened.
Judge, I'd ask that that question be stricken from the record. It was speculative. He had no knowledge of that.
Ms. Wishney, what is your
He
position?
said he just found out it happened, so that's fine.
All right. So the question,
I mean, I think it's in the record why the police were called. Officer Ving testified trouble with person.
okay, hang on.
Okay.
Don't say anything else for a moment.
Sure.
The question that Mr. Trinkler called the police because of your behavior, the answer would be stricken. Is that the question and answer?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be stricken. Ladies and gentlemen, your disregard, and there'll be an instruction at the close of the trial about stricken testimony. That's an example of stricken testimony, not to consider that. Okay, thank you. It's not evidence.
Thank you. So this whole event happens. She's not living with you at that point, right?
I believe she was still staying at her parents'.
Right, she was at her mom's,
Yes.
right? But you're in constant communication with her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you were communicating with her because you wanted to.
Someone had to take care of her.
So your feelings now are that you did it only because someone had to take care of her?
I cared a lot for her, and in statements, things were not optimal at the home.
You were exploring getting back together with her when you were messaging back and forth when she was at her mother's.
I was exploring, I still cared very much for Ezra, but there was always just one more lie.
Look, I know that you think that,
I know.
but Judge, I'm going to object and ask that be stricken for the record. He can't give opinion testimony about that.
Well, counsel elicited that, I'm sure by accident, but the answer will stand.
You had a lot of Instagramming with her where you talked to her about how much you loved her, right?
Yes.
And you would talk in your Instagrams about how you remembered kissing and holding her.
Yes.
You would say that you never stopped loving her.
I never stopped loving a lot of people.
That's not what I asked you. You said to her in Instagram that you never stopped loving her.
Yes.
You even said to her, should I date or should I be a single Mengal?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And
Judge, we need a break.
Okay, that's a great idea. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to take
Okay.
a recess for 15 minutes. All rise. Jury, thank you. Please be seated. And thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Court has sustained the objection, and so, Ms. Fisher, you may continue your cross-examination. Again, moving on.
okay, just to kind of orient where we were, you got a call from a Dunn County sheriff and you talked to the police the evening of March 22nd. And you found out Ezra McCandless was in the hospital, right?
Yes.
And you found out that what they had told you, it's okay. They told you she was disoriented and bloody and muddy, right? You had heard those details?
I heard a couple details.
Yeah,
yes.
and that she had called herself Monica Carlin, even though they had the name slightly wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And you know that the name she wants to always be called by is Ezra McCandless, right?
Yes.
And that's always what you called her,
Yes.
right? So you went to the hospital that evening, didn't you?
Yeah.
And when you went to the hospital personnel or law enforcement, whoever, somebody didn't let you in to see her.
Well, when I spoke with the people, I mentioned that she had been admitted, and they said that I could probably see her, because I was curious, like, what had happened, if she was all right.
Sure, but they wouldn't let you see her that night. That's all I'm trying to ask you.
Yes, yeah, they wouldn't let me
You
see.
were able to go see her the next day, right?
I believe it was the next day, yes.
And by the time you saw her the next day, she was reoriented to the fact that she was Ezra McCandless.
Objection, it calls for an opinion.
Sustained.
When you saw her the next day, she wasn't referring to herself as Monica Carlin. She was calling herself Ezra McCandless if somebody asked her name in your presence,
Yeah,
right?
when we talked, yeah.
Okay. Now, I think we had talked about the fact earlier that regardless of what you feel now, back in that period of time of March, late February through March 22nd, that at that time you still would regularly express a lot of love for Ezra McCandless in texts, right?
Yeah.
And when you went to a hotel room with her between March 14th and March 16th or the 14th and 15th, whatever the days were, you stayed there with her overnight, right?
Is this the night
This is like,
about before?
pardon me?
The night I was questioned about before, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I was asking you earlier, yesterday you said that you had stayed with her at the hotel, right?
Correct.
And that you and her made love together.
There was intercourse, yes.
Okay. And And after that, there were messages, before and after messages of love
Yes.
between the two of you, right? And there were even some talk about her expressing a desire to have children with you, right?
I believe so at some point.
And you expressed that back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, on March 22nd, strike that. 1 minute. Before March 22nd, she had talked to you about journals that she was writing, right?
Yes.
And in these journals, without getting into the content, but just to characterize the journals, she was expressing her innermost feelings about things and how she felt about her life, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And she had sent you the journals, right?
At some point, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, she sent it to you a couple different times, right?
I believe I received 2 journals.
And, I see, you got 2 different writings.
Got
not
2 different
times.
copies.
Okay. And she wanted you to read that about how she had felt, right?
Yeah, she was going through therapy and she wanted to express herself.
Okay. And when she was expressing herself as the result of her therapy, she was talking about the relationship that she had with you, right?
I believe there's context about me inside there, yes.
And has it been a while since you've seen the journal?
It's been a long time.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask you some questions about it. So I'm going to show you what's been previously marked and is testified to as exhibit number 365.
Signed spoken.
Correct. And the only portions that we're going to talk about are the portions that you can actually read.
Okay.
Okay?
That's a lot.
Do you need to look at it for a minute or two? I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud.
That's fine. I'm not going to recall things verbatim, though.
Okay, well, if you needed to refresh your memory, I'll just leave it up there for you, okay? In that journal, she referred to her having betrayed the one she loved, right?
I believe she did.
And she was talking about you.
Probably, yes.
And she talked all about the abortion and the terrible feelings she had,
Yes.
how the terrible feelings she had about watching, the tray being taken away, which she didn't want you to see.
That she expressed that.
Okay. And she expressed strong feelings of love for you in Silence Broken, right?
I believe so.
And she expressed strong feelings about having been taken advantage of by 2 other people, though she never named their names in that journal.
Yeah, I don't think there's any names in it, but it does.
And so you were aware that not only was she sending this journal to you, she was sending it to someone who she was very close to named Julia Post, right?
Yes, I was aware of that.
And you'd met Julia Post? Had you actually met her?
A few times we weren't really close. I would call her for counsel sometimes if I needed help with a situation I couldn't handle.
She wasn't really part of the Racy's crowd. She was someone Ezra knew from high school.
I don't think she liked the vibe there as much.
Okay. Right. She's a college student in Eau Claire. That's how she happened to be around. Okay. And she told you when you talked on the evening of March 21st, or even earlier than that, you had conversations because she told you she wanted to show these journals to John Hanson and Alex Woodward, right?
She is an Ezra McCandless, not
Yes, I'm sorry, not Julia Post. I'm sorry if I was unclear. Ezra McCandless wanted to deliver these journals to John Hanson and Alex Woodward, right?
Yeah, she said.
She wanted to tell them through her writing how she was feeling, right?
I think she referred to it as getting her voice back.
I was just going to ask you that. She wanted to get her voice back, and that's what you and her discussed on Instagram together.
I believe so, yes.
All right. And you didn't want her to deliver these in person, fair?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of reckless.
And, well, what you said, if I'm misquoting you, but I think yesterday you said It's the modern era. She should send them by email. I know those weren't your exact
Well,
words,
yeah.
but basically summarizing what
There's
you were
other
saying.
options too.
Okay. But she wanted to deliver them in person regardless of what you were saying, right?
Yeah,
She told you that, right?
that's what she
Okay.
had expressed.
And on March 22nd, she came to Racy's, right?
Yes,
And you were having I guess the laundromat's probably right by there, right?
it's just on a couple blocks away.
Okay, so, and you're having your laundry done and kind of doing your own thing at Racy's that morning, right?
Yep, it was a day off.
Okay. And when she comes into Racy's, she goes past you, you're having a cigarette outside, you exchange hellos, she goes in, gets coffee at the counter, right?
I think they stated she slapped money on the counter.
No, okay,
And
did
walked
you
out.
see her? Forget what other people stated about what happened. I'm asking you, because you're only allowed to testify right now about what
Yes,
you saw.
I understand that.
So that's what I'm trying to ask you about, okay? Just if I'm not clear.
I didn't see her purchase coffee. I just know she went in. Might have been a transaction, but then she left.
Okay, so there's nothing that you saw about that, right? For buying the
About
coffee?
the coffee, no.
Okay. You knew it was her habit to come in and get coffee at Racy's, right?
She got coffee a lot, but
Right, and you get coffee a lot. I mean, it's a coffee shop.
Judge, he hadn't finished the question. It sounded like he was gonna complete his response when defense counsel interjected.
Okay, just let the witness answer the question. Go ahead and answer.
there had kind of been like an unspoken relationship with the baristas, where a lot of times patrons that were there quite often would get a free cup here or there, but she had worn out her welcome for that, so.
Judge, this is why I'm trying to lead him, so.
Okay. All right. So why don't you continue your questioning?
Okay.
And
Mr. Mengal, I'm going to ask you questions and ask you to try to answer what I'm asking. Is that okay?
I'm answering
Okay.
about the money.
So they did give, I was going to ask you about that, actually.
Yeah.
They would give free coffee to people a lot, right? You
Yes.
would also buy her coffee sometimes, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're saying there was some tension between her and the baristas, right?
Yeah, I think that was her saying she paid her dues.
Oh, okay.
You know.
And that was particularly between the Wisniewskis and her, right?
The Wisnowski sisters?
Is it pronounced Wisniewski?
I believe it's Wisnowski. I'm not,
Yeah. One of them was the manager there at
Aubrey?
Aubrey, right? And she had a sister named Ariel,
Ariel,
who
yes.
also worked there, and they didn't like Ezra, quite frankly.
They often thought about hiring her at first. I'm not sure when the relationship soured.
Okay, but they were the baristas that you're talking about, right?
They might have been on, I don't know who was on the shift at that day.
I understand that. Now, after you were outside with your cigarette, you came into Racy's and you sat down at a table, right?
I believe so.
And then you came over to, I don't know if you call it that, but the coffee bar? It's like a bar, but not a liquor bar, it's a coffee bar.
Oh, like the bench.
The counter.
Yeah, the counter.
And you sat near Max Martinson?
Yes.
Maxwell, right? And Ezra came over and she talked to Maxwell, right? Right?
I believe so.
And the whole time that she's talking to Maxwell, you didn't inject yourself into that conversation at all, right?
I don't recall interjecting.
In fact, you were looking at your phone while she was talking to him.
I believe I was, maybe.
Okay, so you're looking at your phone, you're texting or Instagramming or reading the news or whatever you're doing, but you're looking at your phone during that time.
I believe
right?
so.
Okay. She leaves, right?
Yeah, they were going to exchange.
Right. She leaves, Maxwell comes back, right?
I left to go to the laundromat.
Oh, that's right. You weren't there when Maxwell came back.
No.
Okay. But later on, you decide that you're going to go look for her, right?
I came back to talk with Max, and we had a conversation about, did that seem off? Did she seem off?
Oh, okay, that's not what I asked you. I said, you came back and you decided to look for her at a certain point,
I
right?
decided to call her father at some point, and that's what inspired me to look for her.
You called her father before you went to Alex's?
I believe I talked to Joe Shane before that. Maybe
Okay,
not.
maybe not. All right. First, you were going to go to John's to look for her, right?
Yeah, it was pretty far out of town, though.
Okay, and then you change your mind and you decide, I'm going to go to Alex's and look for her, right?
Yeah, it was closer.
Because you didn't want her to be talking with Alex in person, right?
I thought it would be in her best interest to have a keep the peace or something else, someone there.
I understand that. What I'm saying is you didn't want her to be talking with Alex.
I didn't
Fair?
want I didn't want to stop her from talking with him. I just wanted to protect my friends.
When you went to Alex's, you went there on your bicycle, right?
Yeah.
You didn't just go up and you knew she was there as soon as you got there, right?
Yeah, the car was idling.
Because her car was there,
Yeah.
right? You went by her car,
Yep,
you went back to the house,
yep,
you went back by the car,
yep.
you went back by the house.
Something didn't make sense to me.
I'm just asking you about your actions,
Yeah,
not your
those
thoughts,
were my
okay?
actions.
You went over, sat by the school, right?
Yeah.
This conversation's going on, it's like 45 minutes long, is I think what you said yesterday.
It was going on for what was uncomfortably
It was
long for
okay,
me.
uncomfortably long for you. You weren't like looking at your watch and saying minute to minute.
I mean, I might have looked at my phone once in a while, but for
Okay.
someone that had expressed things to me, I was like, this seems off.
Okay, but, so, even though when you got there and you knew she was inside with Alex, you did not immediately ring the bell when you got there, right?
I figured that I figured if anything, she would come out within a few more minutes or
But
something.
it didn't happen, and so you're going around, and not ringing the bell, right?
Yes.
When you went in the house, you did not ring the bell or knock on the door to come in.
No, I was holding my phone and she heard my ringtone go off.
You're not supposed to testify about what she heard, but your phone went off, that we can agree on.
My phone went off, yes.
Your phone went off and it made some noise, right?
Yeah, I had a specific ringtone.
It has a specific ringtone, and you have had that ringtone play before in front of Ezra McCandless, right?
Yeah, she knew it was my ringtone.
Okay, so you go in the house without knocking or ringing, and you go in and you go upstairs, right?
I heard her say, please let him help you, or let him help you.
Right, I know what you're saying, you thought you heard.
Oh, I heard that.
Let me just say this, it's a two-story house, right?
It is a two-story house.
It's a two-story house, so when you walk in the house, do you go right up the stairs, or do you have to go around the living room and more towards the back to get up the stairs?
I think there's a door, a little bit of a porch, and it's a straight shot up to his room. I was only in there the one time really, but or the two times.
Older house, right?
It's an older house, yeah.
Okay, not with brand new kind of soundproof construction materials,
No,
right?
it's an old stucco home or something.
Okay, and there's 3 bedrooms upstairs right in a row with each other, right?
Yeah, on the landing, there's a couple
Okay,
rooms.
so Alex's bedroom is in the middle of those bedrooms?
I believe when you come to the crest of the stairs, it was on the right-hand side.
Okay, so there's a bedroom on either side of Alex Woodward's bedroom up there, right?
I believe the other was his roommates, yeah.
Okay, one roommate's name is Matt,
Yes.
another roommate's name is Dave.
I don't think I've ever met Dave, but I believe there was a third roommate.
So Dave's bedroom is right on the other side of the wall from Alex's bedroom, right?
Right on the other side of the...
Wall. He shares a wall with...
okay, they share a wall.
They share a wall, right?
Okay.
And you don't remember seeing Dave, right?
I think that he was sleeping, someone had said. I don't know.
You don't recall.
I don't recall seeing him in those.
Okay. So when you're there, you go in and you start talking to them, and they've been involved in a conversation, right?
Yeah, it was escalated.
Well, I know you're saying it's escalated, but you had not been involved in that 45 minutes of conversation, right?
No, I wasn't involved, and I can't say that I heard specifically what was going on, but
Right. You didn't hear what
there were
was
louder
going on.
noises. It could have been a TV. It could have been a million things.
Okay.
But I
Could have
assumed,
been TV, could have been a million things, but you assumed maybe there was a problem.
yes.
Okay, and so when you assumed that, you went in there and you started talking to them, you hadn't been invited in, right?
No.
There's 2 adults in the room having a conversation, right?
Yes.
Well, you're a lot more adult because at the time, you're like,
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
all right. And when these 2 adults are having a conversation, they don't want you to join their conversation, right?
I asked them if they were both okay.
Yes, but they didn't say, Jason, why don't you sit down and talk with the 2 of us right now? That's not what was said to you, right?
Negative. No one said. I asked them what they would like me to do. Would you like me to leave? Would you like me to stay?
They wanted you to leave.
They said, yeah, you should.
They
go
didn't
outside.
want you to be part of that conversation, right?
No, she said she wanted to keep talking with him, that they were going to be, everything was fine.
Everything was fine, and so you decide you're going to wait outside, right?
I said if either of them needed me, I would wait outside.
Right, so you say that and you go outside,
Yes.
right? And then lo and behold, you get outside and the police are there.
Yes.
And somebody called the police, right?
Yeah, apparently,
And when the police approached you, you knew that they weren't calling the police because of Ezra and Alex. They were calling the police because of you,
I
right?
did not understand that.
This is the second time the police have been called on you within a month.
Objection, relevance, argumentative.
Sustained.
Can I approach?
Yes.
Brief sidebar.
Objection sustained, and you may continue.
When the police get there, you're talking to the police and they're talking to you, right?
Yes,
And you're telling them why you're there, right?
yes.
And they're telling you why they're there, correct?
They didn't specify. They said that someone had called something in. That's all
Okay.
they said.
All right. And they asked you whether or not you were concerned about Alex being violent. You said, I don't think so, but I don't know, right?
I might have said that. This is 2 years ago, you know?
Sure. No worries. So later on, you found out that Alex was missing, right? Right?
Much later on, yes.
And your first thought was that he had assaulted Ezra and then went on the lam.
I was like, nothing makes sense.
Okay, but that was your first thought, right?
She was injured and her vehicle was missing. yes.
Okay, so after that, let me just say something. Going back to something you testified about yesterday, you were asked some questions by the prosecutor about things Ezra McCandless had told you about sex with Alex, right?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, and,
Details.
and what you said yesterday was, she told you, I'm not gonna quote you word for word yesterday, but, you know, that Alex did things she didn't like and wasn't comfortable with,
She had
right?
voiced that at moments, yes.
Yeah, and she had voiced to you specifically that things went too fast,
That they went too fast, yes.
and I think the word you used was that there was some choking and boarding, right?
I'm not specifically sure what the terms, like the nomenclatures of the terms she used at the time, but those are the ones I can recall.
And she told you that when she didn't want to do things, Alex would tell her those things were unfair. That was unfair to him, right?
That it was unfair to him, yes.
Okay. Now, getting back to her journal. When she sent you her journal, would it be fair to say that her journal, Silence Broken, was full of hope?
Yeah, it sounded good.
Objection that calls for an opinion.
Sustained.
You read her writing about hopeful things in her journal, what she expressed as being hopeful, right?
Objection, the rating stands for itself, it's in evidence. His opinion is not relevant.
Sustained.
You once talked to her about being negative, and she told you that if you're negative, you lose power.
Objection,
right?
hearsay.
Sustained on hearsay.
In her journal, she wrote about getting, or I don't know if it's in her journal, but you knew she was getting a new job, right?
Yeah,
She was, in fact, you know, getting her TB test or uniforms, W-2s, all the things you need to do when you're starting a new job.
yeah, I believe she had 2 jobs. She was working back at the school, I believe, walking distance, and then she was getting her TB shot read on a Friday to start another job.
And that was like a nursing home, like taking care of people?
Yeah, I think
right?
so.
And she was involved with her family. She was living at Joe Shane's, right?
She was living at Joe's, yes.
Right. And you were Instagramming with her quite a bit on the night of March 21st, right?
Probably, yeah. We talk quite often.
What page?
Madam Clerk, can I please have the Elmo one?
Judge, I don't have an objection to the introduction and publication of this exhibit.
It's already been introduced.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's
It
some
has
text
not.
that I think was not
I think
introduced.
this is Attorney Vishny's witness.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 687 that the state has no objection to, okay?
And that's already in?
It is not.
This is a different-
This is a different photograph of, a different version of the same photograph. This one has some text around it.
All right, and are you offering this exhibit? That's before we...
Yes, I am
where it's
offering
published?
it. I'd move to admit it.
Okay, any objection from the state?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Exhibit
Now-
687 will be received and you may publish.
Now, you were shown this exhibit, I'm not very good at these things. You were shown this exhibit yesterday, right?
I would just ask for clarification. It's
Okay, you
photograph.
were shown this image yesterday in court.
Yes,
That's a picture you took from the Racy's bathroom wall, right?
yes.
The men's bathroom specifically.
I think there were specific sexes back then, yes.
Okay,
They're
now it's
unisex.
gender neutral?
It's gender neutral.
Okay, but back then they had a men's and a women's, right?
Yes,
All right. And in the men's room, somebody had done this and you saw it and you took a photograph or a screenshot or whatever you want to call it with your phone and you sent it to Ezra McCandless, right?
yeah, it had been mentioned to me and I
Okay.
let it
Now,
know.
I'm going to, just to be real specific, I'm going to ask you to look, and if you can't see it, let me try to,
The text underneath?
yeah, that's what I'm going to ask you about, okay? Just let me know if you're having a hard time seeing it.
No, I can read it.
All right, so on the Instagram, again, it shows the recipient, Ezra McCandless, and you're the
Yeah.
author, right? You, Jason
Yes.
Mengal, the doc wolf, right?
Yeah,
And you sent this picture, right?
yes,
And you can see the time, you see the date, March 21st, 2018,
I can see that.
okay? And you see the time, 23:51:21, right?
Yes.
And that's UTC.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
whatever code that they.
That's not Central Standard Time or Central Daylight Time, right?
Yes,
Okay. And, Judge, I would ask the court to take judicial notice that UTC is 6 hours ahead of Wisconsin time,
Any
On
objection,
March
Ted?
That'd be central.
21st?
It's Central Standard Time and there, I believe that to be correct. I think this is something we can address. It depends on the time of year. It's either 5 or 6. We have a witness who's going to testify about that.
Oh, okay. But it's not Wisconsin time, right?
yeah, I believe it.
UTC used to be called GMT. Have you ever heard of it as that?
The global something time.
Greenwich
Yeah.
Mean Time?
Or something.
In other words, what time it is in England?
Oh,
Right? Okay. And, but that text was sent a little before 6 PM Wisconsin time, right?
on the 21st?
Yes, on March 21st.
Okay. 6 PM?
A little before 6 PM. Does that resonate with your memory?
I mean, possibly. I don't know. This is all.
You
old.
can't remember the
Yeah.
exact. Okay. After that, there was a phone call between you and her and some brief conversation, right?
I believe so. Was this the night she was at,
She was at
Joe's?
Joe Shane's,
Yeah,
right? So she wanted to talk to you after you sent that, right? And the two of you talked, correct?
we talked about, it wasn't.
I just was asking that the two of you
Hold on
talked.
a second. Just a reminder,
Yes.
just answer the questions that are asked of you. Try to focus on what the question is, and then if you can answer the question, but don't try to interpret the question or give some sort of a preface explanation, okay? Just answer the question. Okay, you may proceed.
After that conversation on the phone, there was some more texting between you and Ms. McCandless, right?
After the phone call?
Right.
On Instagram, or where are we talking?
What?
On Instagram or
Yeah,
which
there was more
texting?
conversation. There was more texting on Instagram, right?
I believe there might have been.
And what she told you on Instagram was the words, "Life starts now," right?
Yeah, the conversation we had.
Right. And when she texted you on Instagram, "Life starts now," she sent that to you hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours or so, but roughly after you had sent her this picture that's Exhibit 687, right?
I don't recall.
Okay, would it refresh your memory if I showed you the Instagram? When she texted you, "Life starts now," would that help refresh your
Sure.
memory?
Yeah.
Is that all on 394, Council?
Actually, it starts on 395.
Thank you.
Okay, so. You recall these pages are backwards, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. And so the very top of page 395
Is the end of the conversation.
is a conversation, right?
So it starts down here. Right. The text.
Yeah, it starts there, but then it goes upwards, right?
Yes,
And it says author Dirt Fiend, right?
I see that.
And there's a timestamp at 1:32:06 UTC, right?
I see that, yeah.
Okay. And so she texts you at that point, life starts now, right?
Yeah, I think we'd already had the conversation though.
Okay. And you'd already had the conversation, and she's referring to a conversation she had with her father, right?
Yes,
With Joe Shane.
yes.
And in that conversation, she had what she told you was kind of a nice, emotional, heartwarming talk with her dad, right?
Yeah, really positive father-daughter moment.
A really positive father-daughter talk about getting her life back on track, right?
Yes.
And that had been what she'd been writing about in Silence Broken, getting her life back on track.
Judge, objection again. The document speaks for itself. His opinion is not relevant.
Sustained.
She ended her journal with these words: I cannot hurt
Judge,
myself anymore.
Same objection. The court document speaks for itself.
The document does speak for itself. It is in evidence.
It's in evidence, then I'll just put it on the Elmo.
Judge, we had,
I don't think
I'll leave
only
that to
the
the court's
state gets to
discretion.
Hold
refer
it,
to.
we can, just not everybody at the same time.
I'll withdraw any objection there. I'll leave that to the court's discretion.
Okay, if you want to put it on the Elmo, you can put it on the Elmo.
I will do that.
Jury has seen it, but if you want to show
Right.
them the evidence again,
I'm not going through the whole document. I'm only going to go through the last, very end of it, okay? The very last sentence, she says, I don't accept the past's actions, but recognize them and only want to work towards finding who I truly am, right? That's what she said.
Yes, I see that.
And then it goes on the next page, which is what I really want to get to. I cannot hurt myself anymore. She wrote that, right?
I can't see it yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. I cannot hurt myself anymore. I cannot hurt the ones I love. Right?
Yes,
I can become Ezra McCandless again. Right?
yeah.
I can become Ezra McCandless again. I am worth it. That's how she concluded this special journal that she sent to you.
Objection, it's the defense characterizing the evidence.
That's how she sent this journal.
hold on,
Draw it.
hold on. I'm going to sustain it. It just seems
I'll rephrase it.
argumentative at this point. This is in closing argument, counsel.
It's nighttime. She sent you a journal. Life begins now.
Objection
Right?
asked and answered.
Sustained.
Judge, that really, I don't have any further questions other than life began then.
Okay. And then any redirect?
I just asked that the counsel's last statement not be, the jury be instructed that not be considered as evidence. That was more of an argumentative comment.
Okay. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, that is not evidence. That is argument, and that should be at the closing arguments. But at this point, that is not evidence.
I just, Mr. Mengal, I want to clear up a couple things. There was, so in direct examination, you testified that it was the holiday season generally when you tended to Alex Woodworth's cut on his wrist, correct?
I tried to find supporting evidence for that specific date, but I don't,
Is that the best, that's what you testified to?
I didn't have any conversations to base my idea off.
Is that your best recollection?
Best recollection.
Okay. Now, you also testified that the defendant told you that Alex cut his wrist because he said, if you don't break up with Jason, I'm going to kill myself, correct?
At some point in the,
So that...
not that specific day.
Okay, so that's my question. Sometime around the holidays, the best of your recollection is when he had the cut on his wrist, right?
Yes.
And sometime much later is when that explanation was given to you by the defendant, correct?
Yes.
And was that after you found out about the sexual relationship that the defendant and Alex Woodworth had?
It it wasn't completely solidified, but I had, like I said, I had my inclination to.
Okay. Now, you said that there was a conversation, so, well, let's go to the time in the hotel when you found the text messages between the defendant and John Hanson, and then you called John Hanson.
Yes.
Correct? So in cross-examination, you said that the defendant amended it after you talked to John Hanson on the phone, correct?
I was, both of them.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
And what was the first thing that the defendant told you prior to talking to John Hanson about her sexual relationship with John Hanson?
That it was an assault.
That it was an assault?
Yes.
And then, once you talked to John Hanson, how was that amended?
I would talk to him. I asked him what had happened. He gave me a story. I released some details of things I knew. He changed his story. And this between the two parties, I was doing this because I was privy to more information at that point. I just wanted to seek the truth.
So did the defendant tell you more information after you had some conversation with John Hanson?
She told me more, yes. We ended up going for a drive.
And did she tell you information that was different than what she told you initially before you talked to John Hanson?
Yes.
Now, the information that you got about Alex Woodward saying he was going to kill himself if the defendant didn't break up with you, that came from the defendant, correct?
That came from Ezra McCandless, yes.
Alex Woodward never told you that, correct?
No, he never stated that it was a suicide attempt or anything.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, any recross
Yep.
limited to that, redirect?
Absolutely limited.
Thank you.
When you yourself looked at this wound on Alex's wrist, I think as they said, it was the holiday season, right? Sometime in December, right? And you looked at it and you knew it looked like a suicide attempt, right?
Yes.
So whether or not he told you why he wanted to do a suicide attempt, that was pretty clear to you, right?
It wasn't my job to judge him on what it was.
Of course not. But it looked to you like it was. I'm not asking you to be judgmental. I'm just asking about what you saw.
I'm going to object on the opinion and asked and answered. There's been a ruling that he's not an expert to testify in this area.
Sustained, and I think that's already been covered, so.
Okay. But regardless of what you were thinking or what your opinion is, what you said to Alex is you only get one chance at this.
Yes.
No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Mengal, you are free to step down from the stand. I don't know whether you will be recalled or not. It's possible if you're under subpoena. So whoever has you under subpoena, you may stay in touch with them to know whether you have to come back, okay?
Okay.
But at this point, then you would still be subject to the court's exclusion order, so do not discuss your testimony with any other witnesses or any other witnesses' testimony as well. That includes watching any coverage of other witnesses, okay?